Okay, this is the document you must be able to see right now. So, computer by Carnegie Mellon University, and from the Computer Security Incident Response Plan. So, the way they have done, and the name of the approver is Mary and Blair, and date of approval and the date of review. Right. So they have prepared a very nice document, so we can refer for our own thing that how exactly the things are. Fine. So let's look at the way the incident response is going to work on. That this document describes the overall plan for responding to information security incidents. So that's what we were discussing for last 2 days as well, or for last two sessions, that what is exactly the incident and how exactly the planning is going to be done. It defines the roles and responsibility of the participants, characterization of the incident, that why the roles and responsibility of the participants are required. Participants could be anything, could be customer, could be infrastructure engineer, could be system administrator. The need of the participants are required, that if this kind of incident happens, whom to contact. This is the very first thing that you need to understand, whom to contact. Characterization of the incident. So this thing is really required when we are going to prioritize the incident response and how exactly the solution is going to go ahead. Relationship to other policies and the procedures, and reporting requirement. The goal of the computer security plan is to detect and react to computer security incidents, determine their scope and risk. So that's what we have covered into the the lesson learned process as well, that what is the scope of this particular incident and what is the risk is going to come with the data it is going to exploit. Respond appropriate to the incident. Now think about the scenario. When you say the respond appropriate, what does that mean? For my banking system, the availability is not at all important. What is important? The confidentiality as well as the integrity. So if I am going to see that because of I need to fix the confidentiality and the integrity which is being breached, so it is fine if the banking system is not available for a couple of hours, because the availability really doesn't matter. But some of the, like for example Myntra shopping or any other shopping cart or any other application where really the availability matters. So in that case, I need to find out the solution which can take care about my integrity as well as the confidentiality, but it will not harm the availability, or it will very lessly harm the availability. So there won't be any kind of what you can say impact or 100% impact on the availability. So this is the response appropriate to incident. What is the incident priority? What is the requirement? And then according to that you communicate the results and risk to all stakeholders. This is the quite important thing what you need to understand, that as soon as the incident happens, please take a note on this, as soon as the incident happens, it is required to understand that, confirm that incident, respond it, and just broadcast it or communicate it to all the stakeholders. So stakeholders are going to be aware of that, okay, what are exactly the problem going on. There should not be any kind of last minute surprises, and reduce the likelihood of incident from reoccurring. This is a way of the lesson learned process. Please try to understand. The scope of the applies to information system, institutional data, network of the Carnegie Mellon University, fine, and any person or device who gains access to their system or data. So this is respect to that particular university. Now, Information Security Officer ISO is charged with the executing this plan by virtue of its original charter and various policies, whatever the policies you have done, such as computing policies, information security policy, and the HIPAA. HIPAA is really required if you are targeting yourself for, as a medical, the working security professional as in a medical domain. Fine. Okay. To whom ISO is supposed to work? Ask for cooperation and assistance from community members. Work closely with the administrative groups, Student Life Office, Human Resource, and the Office of General Counsel in investigation and e-discovery matters. So please make sure about that how exactly those things are. Now see here, that's what we have discussed. Event is an exception to the normal operation of IT infrastructure. Incident is an event that accessed by ISO staff violates the computing policy, information security policy, and whatever the other policies are. So this is also we have discussed in the last session itself. Now, what you need to understand that personal identifiable information security breach notification requirement PII is defined as the person's first name or first initial or last name in combination with the one or more items. Okay. For example, security number, for example, driver license number, for example, identification card number, for example, financial account number, for example, medical or health insurance information. So this is the thing what you need to understand, that how exactly whenever you take care about any of the security policy, you need to say how do you define the personal identifiable information which is sufficient to identify a one particular person. And exactly the same thing is going to be with the PHI or the protected health information, which is going to be the name, age, all elements of dates, and so on and so forth. So this is the thing what you need to understand to move ahead. Okay, medical records, certificates. Actually, I stopped sharing, so you can actually go to see. Let me share because my internet connection is not working very great. So let me have, yeah. So I'm on the page number 5. We are actually discussing the document, the way the Carnegie Mellon University has done and how exactly the things are. So if you go with the roles and responsibilities, yeah. So let me share, yeah. So roles and responsibilities, fine. So incident response coordinator, who is responsible for assembling all the data for the incident, communicating with the appropriate parties, ensuring that the information is complete, and reporting the incident both during and after the investigation. This is the first entity. This is the second entity which is going to talk to other CMU staff, outside contractors who gather, preserve, and analyze the evidence so that the incident can be brought to a conclusion. And that is a major reason when you say the incident response handlers. That is a major importance of your log file. There is a one important of your log file. So when you say that, okay, you are defining this particular event as an incident, how have you reached to this particular decision that this is an incident? By monitoring the log file. Continuous monitoring of the log file is again kind of difficult to move ahead. So in that particular sense, but you need to see that how you may neglect some of the things from the log files are resulting into the different kind of incidents which should not happen. So that is the major reason why you need to take care about the the policies, why you need to take care about what is exactly required, you need to take care about where exactly you need to move on. Now, fine. So let me go to the 6th page And let me share the screen again. Yeah. Outlines the most general task for incident response will be supplemented by specific internal guidelines and procedures that describes the use of security tools or the channel for the communication. Please make sure about this particular thing, that how the things are. So Dell is asking me the question that, ma'am, should we implement this in the dissertation project? Dell, feel free to do that if you are having time, but for me it is not at all required. But if you do have that, this is the thing what you do require, and it is really going to be really good for your dissertation project if you are planning to, apply onto that. Evidence preservation is really required, is to reduce and contain the scope of incident and ensure that IT assets are returned to service as quickly as possible. Depends on what is your confidentiality, integrity, or the availability. Depends on the priority of that particular thing. You need to say that IT assets are returned to the service as quickly as possible. Fine, Dell, you are really welcome to do that. Fine. So this is a quite nice document by Carnegie Mellon University. Now, there are the different. So the last portion, what you can say, the training. Training is really required. So continuous improvement of incident handling process implies that those processes are periodically reviewed, and that's why the lesson learned, and that's why I do not remember that to whom I ask you, I discuss with, that it can, when you say the lesson learned process, it cannot be mitigated, it can be reduced to a particular angle, but there are the different kind of flavors for same kind of errors. So continuous improvement of your incident handling process is required to understand the various angle for the same thing. Are you getting, my dear students? Yeah, and that is the
Yes,
major reason why I have shared that particular NIST guidelines as well, which is going to give you the complete way of how exactly the things are done. So in the this particular document, they have given the incident response life cycle, and quite nicely they have mentioned that how exactly it is a cycle which is never going to end. You cannot say that the things are being eliminated, the risk is being eliminated. No, it cannot be eliminated. It can be reduced. It cannot be mitigated. It can be reduced. The area by the risk which is getting exploited can be reduced, but it cannot be mitigated completely. So it is a cycle. Fine. So this is a document by Carnegie Mellon University, what we are discussing. Fine. Okay, so quite nicely they have explained. Fine, my dear students. So this is the thing what we need to understand. Now let me open my Word document, and let us discuss the guidelines for effective penetration testing program. So let me open it, a Word document, and let me share with you. Yeah. Yeah. So this is how exactly you are trying to, as a vulnerability assessor or as a pen tester, you are trying to prepare for it, right? So here, mm, we can say prepare for penetration testing. And so what we need to have, uh, like that, what we have discussed, we need to have the governance, we need to have the purpose, we need to have the targeted environment, we need to have the suitable data. After this particular thing is done, you are preparing for the penetration testing. You need to take care about the conduction of the penetration testing. So when you say the conduction of the penetration testing, so how exactly you are going to have? What you are going to test? What you are not going to test? You need to have the approval for the same. Approval for the beginning of the test, approval for the end of that particular test, approval for the way the testing cycle is going to be, approval for the way you are going to manage the process, fine. So you need to have the approval to start the uh, testing. You can say process, running. You can say the accessing the constraints with data boundaries. Then you can have the, based on that, what could be the vulnerabilities. Now, once the things are done, you need to take care about what are the vulnerabilities are there, how you are trying to go list of vulnerabilities, exploitable platform. You can have, along with this, you can have the suggestions according to the policies and procedures. These are the things what you need to take care about while you are trying to preparing for the penetration testing. Now, how exactly you are going to move ahead? How exactly you are going to have? So what is the, how you are going to start? So you need to understand the purpose. So when you understand the purpose, so you need to see that what is the objective of this particular penetration testing. Purpose of testing, what is the objective of it? What you want to achieve out of this particular penetration test? So it is actually written into the policy document that what you are going to achieve in a broad way. And then you need to go into the down, see the what is the scope of that particular policy. Get the information. Information gathering is the important thing. Please make sure whenever the vulnerability assessment or the penetration testing process is going to start, information gathering is the first thing that you need to do. How exactly the process is going to begin? What are the entries and exit points? What is the diagram, the entire project diagram, the entire network diagram if you would like to go for the penetration test of the network? So entire overview of the information gathering you need to have for the underlying environment which is responsible or for which you are trying to do the penetration testing. Now, once that particular gathering of the information is done, once you are aware of that this is the purpose of testing, then you need to have the plan the way the testing is supposed to move on. Now, when you say the plan the way the testing is going to move on means what? Where exactly, what is the upper limit this particular, what is the upper limit of the scope this testing can proceed? As we have discussed with the example as well, that if I am taking care about the penetration testing of my website or of my web server, naturally I may some point of time I can get the access of my database. But as a penetration tester, I'm not supposed to go inside the database to see whether the username or the password is available or not. No, this is not my job. This is out of the scope for my penetration testing. So this is the thing what you need to understand. The targeted environment as well as the suitable data. What need to be considered? That is really important. Which functionality need to be considered? And after that, you need to have the process to start the testing process. How you are trying to take care about. I want that. And based on this particular thing, how exactly the data is getting exploited, the constraints with the data boundary. Are you getting, my dear students? So we are discussing the purpose of the penetration testing. And with this particular penetration testing, we are trying to see how exactly the preparation of the penetration testing takes place. Hello, my dear students. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, any question till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so anyone, so there is a definition by one of the service which is named as CREST. I do not exactly remember the definition out of, I'm very poor in that, but they, if in a crisp way, if I say that penetration testing is nothing but which is going to take care about the different or which is going to refer to different kind of documentation which for the policies as well as the requirement to understand the different kind of attack surface into your application and how exactly you are trying to reduce the data exploitation by those many of attack surface. Are you getting, my dear students? Okay. So this thing you need to understand while going to go through penetration testing. Any question on that? So if someone asks you that how exactly the penetration testing is going to work, So basically what you are doing the assessment of development and deployment infrastructure, isn't it? Which may include the storage, which may include the network, which may include the web servers, which may include the business applications. Why? Because the policies you are trying to go for, the requirement you are trying to go for, and the weak points during the development and as simple as that. So for the incident response, you can follow that particular document, NIST document, which I have already shared with you. Yeah, but to have with the simplicity, the Cargi melon is really good, what we have referred. Now, we need to take care about the penetration testing in a very different way. How exactly? Suppose I have created a web application, and that particular web application is accessing the different kind of infrastructure, and there is a problem. There is a attack surface what I am trying to exploit as a bad user. So what I can say that, okay, is this the application what is vulnerable, or is this the infrastructure onto which this particular application is being deployed is vulnerable? I really do not know which one is vulnerable. So into that, whenever you do the pen testing, you need to take care about the application vulnerability as well as the infrastructure vulnerability. Fine. So when you go with the application vulnerability, you need to take care about the entire application. Again, the scope is going to be defined. I'm not supposed to reach to the database until unless I say, okay, I see that, okay, the database is storing the username as well as the password in the plain text format. And if it is into my scope, if there is no vulnerability according to the policies into the application, then I do not have any right until unless it is directed to see the database. Please make sure about. Then you can simply raise your hand up that, okay, there is no vulnerability into the application, but for the database I did not check because I do not have any kind of authorization to check the database. Second is going to be the infrastructure vulnerability. Infrastructure means what? First is your storage. Second is how have you developed the firewall rules, or how have you updated the firewall rules. That is really important. How have you subnetting, or how have you given the you can say or allow the IP addresses. So in that particular sense, if there are two files into the Linux, host.allow and host.deny, what are the files, what are the IP addresses? How do you define the IP addresses? Have you given the specific IP address, or you have given the range of IP addresses? This is again according to the policy. If according to the policy, if I want that whatever the IP address, the class C IP address starts from 100 to 200, let's say, is not supposed to work on or is not supposed to be accessed by this particular system. And instead of writing from 100 to 200, I have written 100, then 101, then 102, then 103, and somehow I just skipped the 110. That means there is a vulnerability introduced by me only. Because instead of writing from 100 to 200, I have just written 101, 102, 103 like that. So 110 is going to be allowed, which it was not supposed to access this particular system. So this is the infrastructure vulnerability what I am introducing. The second thing is, now please make sure about what could be the second thing. The second thing could be, how are you reusing the storage? See here, whenever the storage is going to be reused from one particular project to another project, data is never going to be deleted from one project. So even if you do the delete, even if you do the format, no, but data can be retrieved. So there is a risk always. Even if you format, still the data can be retrieved. The storage can be, it's always safe to destruct the storage instead of, or have them multiple passes of sanitization for that particular storage so that the data can be removed. So it could be possible due to my lenient behavior, okay, from one particular project, I have just given the storage to another particular project, or if I'm working in the cloud, the storage is getting shared. And since I haven't done the multi-pass sanitization for that particular storage, I'm able to see the data from the another project. This is again the vulnerability because my policy says that, okay, either you need to use the new storage or you need to do the multi-pass sanitization for the old storage. So there won't be any kind of traces for the old data, but this thing I did not do. So because of that, the vulnerability into the storage is being introduced. Are you getting, my dear students? So we have just discussed about the storage as well as the IP addresses, the subnets, how exactly the things are going to be. Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
are you with me right now? Okay. Now, the another thing could be there, which is going to be taken care about the, let me say, your application. How tightly your application is bonded with your infrastructure. Is it a kind of tight coupled architecture that your application is only going to be executed into this kind of infrastructure? Or is there anything else what we can actually, or it is quite flexible? Sometimes the application also can introduce the vulnerability into the infrastructure. So what we need to have? We need to take care about the vulnerability assessment. When you go with the vulnerability assessment, so there are the different kind of tools to identify the different kind of vulnerability, but it is again a process. What the objective? The objective of this is to of this process is to have the standard minimum level of security. What can say which the organization policies demand. Please make sure about it. Fine. Are you getting me? Now, it is just the assessment, nothing more than that. So it is never going to exploit. It is never going to take care about the. It is going to see the attack surface, but it is never going to simulate any kind of attack, or it is never going to see that okay, this particular data I am going to get from this particular vulnerability assessment. No, it is basically going to check how easily or how rigidly you can say you are maintaining the minimum security standard as written into the organization policy. Are you getting, my dear students? Okay. So now, whatever we have discussed, can you just crisp it down? And I'm just giving you 10 minutes. Just crisp it down. We have started from the incident response. Then we have talked about the preparation for the penetration testing. Then we have seen that what are the different steps for you do require for the preparation. Then we have seen the assessment of development and deployment infrastructure to take care about the vulnerability assessment and what is the objective. So I just want your 10 minutes before we can move ahead to take care about the vulnerabilities. Fine. So can you crisp it down and then we will move on? My dear students, whatever we have discussed, just write it down at your end and then we are going to move ahead. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Feel free to ask me any question, whatever we have discussed. Shall I stop sharing or let my document get shared? Hello? Shall I stop sharing? My dear students?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes?
about the VAPT 3 assignment open book, I emailed you yesterday. I wasn't able to attend the last lecture, and I realized that I
Sorry?
didn't attach the question number 4.
Fine, not a problem, Arun.
Yeah, I have emailed you.
Sure. I hope you are able to write, all the students. Please ask me the question if you do have.
Ma'am, why do we need approval to start testing?
Approval is really required because if the as when you say approval, that means you do have the written permission from the authorities to go ahead and test, because it is going to open up the different kind of behavior of the application which is known only to that organization. Fine. So if the organization is ready, then and then only you are supposed to do that. Otherwise, it is known as hacking. Fine, Darren?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Any question? Feel free to ask me. Yes. Avi, Palakjit, are you able to write? Tanmay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So, are you done with the writing? Any question till now? So any of these many of services, whether it is an infrastructure or the penetration testing process, so ultimately it has to deal with the system at the end. Fine. Now let me share one particular link with you, which is going to tell you about how exactly the problems with the server. Now, so we need to understand two things right now, that ultimately whenever you go with the penetration testing, or whenever you go with the incident response, or whenever you go with the any of the vulnerability assessment, everything goes with the approval, the policies, the plan approval, the scope approval, the data approval, the lesson learned process, and lots of things. So now, whenever you work with the system, so everything is going to be done by management, and the senior management is always going to be involved into the security. The IT part is going to come very later on, but it is going to come for sure. But ultimately, whatever the guidelines, whatever the policies, whatever the procedures are, according to that, we are supposed to move on. Now, so when you reach to the system, so there are the different kind of things what you need to move on. So let me give a link for the Red Hat documentation, and after that let me take some break. I think I need to have some water. Okay, so I put the link onto the chat window for the Red Hat documentation, and this particular documentation is going to give you the complete understanding about the how exactly the attacks are happening, and with respect to the different kind of services. So they have given the various services. For example, the printing services they have given the SSH services they have given, and then they said about the what are the different kind of insecure services to move ahead. So just go through this particular document, or if you would like to have the break, you can take a break of 10 minutes, and then we will be here with 10 minutes to discuss the different kind of thing listed into this particular document. Fine. So let us have a break for 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm back. Have you seen the document? Did you get the chance to go through the document? My dear students? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, did you get the chance to go through the document? To see
Yes.
how exactly it is? Yeah. Now, can anyone brief me about? Okay, so very first thing is, what is SSH? Yeah. What is SSH? Can anyone tell me what is SSH? Yes, my dear students. Have you heard the name SSH?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So what it is?
It's a
Yeah,
protocol, right?
it is a protocol for what?
It's a command line connection.
Command line connection for what?
Ma'am, it will
Ma'am.
log the activities done by a particular user, but it will not log the credentials of that user.
It will not log the credentials of that user. Means what?
Ma'am, like the password and username, it will not log that in the database, but it
Mm-hmm.
will log the activities that are done by that user.
Fine. SSH is always going to log the username. Okay, the password is never going to be locked, but username is always going to be locked if the lock service is being enabled. Fine. Now, whenever you go with the SSH, so SSH generally works with the private and the public key pair cryptography, if you are aware of, or you can say the asymmetric key cryptography kind of. So when you go with the public and the private key pairs, so public key pair means which is available to everyone, and private is going to be go with the client only. So in that particular sense, it is going to use the different kind of algorithms. The DSA could be there, the RSA could be there. It's an encryption algorithm to take care about the what you can say the um, public key generation or the private key generation. Now, fine. The problem here with the SSH that how exactly you are trying to store the keys. You have really nicely you have stored the keys. Somewhere the keys needs to be stored into the file system. How easily you are able to give the access to that particular directory or that particular device where exactly the key is being stored. This is the first thing what you need to understand is, because ultimately if as a bad user I want to do the SSH to your system, I am going to take care about the key, because until unless key I do not know the password. Please take a note. With the SSH, I can either go with the authentication with the password. I can do the authentication with the public private key pair. I can do the authentication by Kerberos as well. I can do the authentication by any of other, let's say the LDAP is also there. I can do that particular thing. Only it has to identify the user. So SSH can do that. But the problem with the public and the private key pair is the key where exactly the private key is being stored. Public key is available to every client. But where exactly the private key is being stored to decrypt the message. Now, in that particular sense, you need to understand that where exactly. So there was a, I do not know whether I have shared this thing or not, but I do not remember this. There was a kind of workshop which was there by ACM, 3 to 4 years back. That particular person has really given us a very nice demonstration on how exactly the SSH key is being hacked. I am not storing to any other location. I'm not storing into the default location, but I'm storing into that particular location, which may have the permission 755, which may have the permission 744, or which may have the permission 77700 as well. Try to see. It could be the different kind of permissions to the different kind of users. So where exactly the key is being stored. So SSH is the secure shell. And this particular secure shell, so generally we do not give or we do not permit the root access by this secure shell. Root access is always denied by default. There is a parameter, the permit login, permit root login to enable the root access. But root access is disabled by default. And with this particular disable feature, what we are going to have is enabling the normal user access with respect to normal set of permissions. This is what are all about the SSH. If someone asks you that how exactly the SSH is different than the Telnet, they both are the quite same thing, but the Telnet is not at all secure. It actually put your username and the password in the plain text format. There is no encryption algorithm in the Telnet which is being used. So there is a vulnerability into the Telnet. Let me give you the vulnerability with the SSH with the CVE. Let me open it up. Okay. Yeah. Let me share the screen. These are the vulnerabilities which are being reported with the with the SSH. You can just go through that. See here, the 11th vulnerability, you can say it is being denial of service attack, and it was reported in 2003. So SSH secure shell before 3.2.9 allows remote attacker to cause a denial of service via malformed BER or DER packets. Are you aware of what is a BER or DER? My dear students, are you aware of what is the BER or DER?
Ma'am, where?
See the 11th. Are you able to see my screen? Just look at
Yes,
and
ma'am.
SSH secure shell to cause denial of service via malformed BER DER packets. Are you aware of what is BER or DER?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So let me tell you how exactly the things are. Okay, if anyone asks you this particular thing, that out of the 7 OSI network layer architecture, where exactly the storage exists, what will be your answer? I do have 7 layers of OSI architecture. Are you aware of this? Hello? Are you aware of 7
Yes.
layers of? Yeah. Now, my question is, if someone asks you where does the storage exist, what will be your answer? On which layer the storage exists? Here? Any question? Fine. If I say the storage always exists into the application layer, am I correct? Storage always exists onto the application layer, am I correct? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you agree with the storage exists on the application layer? Fine. Now, what happens is, there are many different systems with the different kind of infrastructure, with the different kind of configuration. Two systems are always going to interact with each other over the network, as simple as that. Infrastructure could be different, the protocols could be different, the port numbers could be different, the language could be different, that one portion is being developed in the Java, other portion is being developed in the Python, let's say. So incompatibility is always there. That's why the driver exists, but incompatibility is always there. So from the application layer, the data is being presented to the presentation layer. Don't you think so? Yes or no? The data is
Yes,
being
ma'am.
presented to the presentation. So when you say, what do you mean by the data is getting presented to the presentation layer? All the encoding schemes to take care about the incompatibility, to take care about the security, to take care about the seamless data transmission, to take care about the certificate generation. All these many of the encoding schemes works at the presentation layer. So there is one thing what you need to understand is the abstract syntax notification. If you get the time somewhere, you just search for asn.1, which is named as the abstract syntax notification. Abstract syntax notation. Now, when you say the abstract syntax notation or ASN contains three things. The objective of the ASN to minimize the incompatibility among the different kind of presentation layer. So there are three different rules what the ASN is going to work on. One is the BER, which is named as the basic encoding rule. The other is going to be the which actually takes care about the data types. The second is named as the CER, or you can say the canonical encoding rules, which takes care about the certificate generation. Which takes care about the semantics of your whatever you are encoding. And the next is going to be the DER. I do not exactly remember the full form of DER. DER is responsible to take care about the certificate generation. So whatever you are saying, okay, the client and server are going to interact with each other by generating the certificate. How? It is through DER. Two clients are able to interact with each other. How? It is through BER. They can see the language, they can understand the language of each other. How? It is through CER. So every protocol, whether it is a SSH, whether it is a Telnet, whether it is a NFS, whether it is a TCP/IP, whether it is a TLS, whether it is a Kerberos or any other authentication protocol, you say, everything is going to work with the CER, BER, and DER. The way the data is getting encoded and the way the data is getting presented. Are you getting, my dear students? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes, please.
ma'am, what is BER?
It's a basic encoding rule. Fine. And right now, the problem is the attack happens. And please make sure about the BER and DER. They are responsible to take care about your encoding, the certificate generation, as well as the semantics of that particular message. And anyone can, although the attack on this many of encoding scheme is not simple, because the person really do not know that how many hops it is doing, because it is going to change by hop to hop, because infrastructure is different. But if any of the attack happens into that, there are the different vulnerabilities reported into this as well. So your certification gets changed, your certificate gets changed, your semantics of the message gets changed. Are you getting me? You may lose the value of the data as well. So let me show you, since we are discussing the protocols for this, so let me show you the asn.1 RFC. Yeah, and let me share the screen. Yeah, so here, are you able to see the RFC ASN.1 translation? Hello, my dear students, are
Yes,
you able to
ma'am.
see? Yeah, so this is the RFC, which is really work for. Now you can see how exactly the ASN is going to work for. Translation of ASN1 from one version to another without resulting in any change to the encoded result using the basic encoding rules or BER. It is distinguished encoding rules or DER, which is responsible to take care about the certificate among the client and server, and the last is going to be the CER. So you can go through this particular RFC to see what are the different kind of the development is being done. So let me share this particular link with you. If you do have time, it is not into the syllabus, but if you do have time and you are really interested in security, just go through this particular RFC to see how exactly the task can be done. Fine. So these are the SSH, and from where we have reached to this topic, these are the SSH vulnerability what we are discussing. And with the SSH vulnerabilities, there was a denial of service where the malformed DRBR. Why? Because I do not understand the certificate. Certificate is not at all valid. If the certificate is not valid because I changed some of the encoding rules into the certificate, encoding rules, and because of that the certificate started malfunctioning, you can say, or malformed. So in that particular sense, you can see that naturally the system is going to give you the denial of service because I do not understand what this kind of certificate it is. As simple as that. Now, the next thing you can see right now over here, SSH secure shell for servers allows remote attackers to override allow authentication configuration. Use less secure authentication scheme than configured for the server. Remote attackers to override allow authentication configuration. So if you see the SSH configuration file, there is a parameter which is going to say how do you want to go for authentication. Would you like to go for the password authentication, or would you like to go for the passwordless authentication where the Kerberos is going to be there, or would you like to go for the public key, private key? So remote attackers to override this particular parameter. Again, there is an attack. This is the SSH secure shell for servers and SSH for the workstation when running without the putty, you can say. So just see here, there are the different kind of things which is being given, and you can just go through what exactly these things. If you do have time, just go through that. So here just look at for 22 SSH protocols 1 and 2 are implemented in OpenSSH. Have various weaknesses which can allow the remote attacker to obtain the following information: password length, which simplifies the brute force password guessing, whether the RSA or DSA, which is going to be used as an encryption, the number of authorized keys in the RSA authentication, or the length of the shell command. This was reported somewhere in 2001. So see, the different kind of things are always going to be there to go ahead with the protocols. So this is one thing what we are discussing. Shall we move ahead, all dear students? Any question till now? Yes, my dear students. Hello? Am I audible to you? Is there any question? Shall we proceed ahead? Yeah, fine. So we're saying we can proceed ahead. Now, there is a, so these are the attacks what we can have or what the attacker can have. Denial of service, flooding a service with the request, distributed denial of service, script vulnerability attacks, buffer overflow attacks, which we have already discussed. Now, identifying and configuring the service. See here. Now, these are the insecure service what you need to have as a vulnerability assessor. First is the transmit username and the password over the network unencrypted. Many older protocols such as Telnet and FTP, this is the thing what we have discussed. Telnet and FTP, they do not use the encrypted username and the password. They just use the plain usernames and the password over the network. So for that particular thing, if as a vulnerability assessor, if you find that, okay, if anyone is or if any transmission is doing the plain text with the username and the password, just make sure this is the vulnerability and you need to take care of that. So we cannot encrypt as soon as we find, we can always see the approval, and that if the approval is there, we can suggest it. We can always do the suggestion, we cannot implement it. We are the vulnerability assessor, not the developers or the implementer. Please take care of that. Many protocols transmit the data over the network unencrypted. FTP is there, HTTP is there, SMTP is also there. SMTP is for the, what is the SMTP? Can anyone tell me? What is the SMTP?
Ma'am, it's a protocol, transmitting protocol.
Which protocol is this?
Secure mail transfer protocol.
Which protocol is this?
Secure mail transfer protocol.
Secure mail transfer protocol or simple mail transfer protocol.
Simple mail transfer.
Ma'am, simple mail transfer.
Simple mail transfer protocol it is. So it is not going to use the, you know, the encryption, you can say. After that, there is going to be the network file system, NFS, and the Samba. Can you tell me how does they work? Any idea about the NFS and Samba?
What Samba?
Yeah. Any idea about? Yes. Any idea Samba and NFS, how do they work? Samba is going to share the files from the Windows to Linux, or from Linux to Windows, or from Linux to Linux as well. But by default, the Samba is meant to take care about the Windows file sharing system. Are you getting, my dear students? NFS is going to work with the NFS file sharing system over the Linux system. So NFS is the network file sharing system, which transmits the information over the network unencrypted. Now, please, since it is a network file sharing system, so I need to give always the username and the password. But I cannot see that those username as well as the password is going to be unencrypted always, because it is never going to work on that. What it is going to work, it is always going to work. It is going to ask me, okay, would you like to give the read privileges? Would you like to give the write privileges? Or would you like to give the read only permissions? What are the port numbers? What are the IP addresses from where the information can access? What are the users which are allowed to insert or allowed to upload any of the file or the directories? So these are the things what you're or whether the root user is able to see the files into other system or not, because as soon as the, so generally what happens, NFS by defaults the disable the other machine root user. If you are having your own machine and I'm trying to access your machine as a root. So for your machine, I cannot access as a root, even if I'm accessing as a root, but still it is going to work like a normal user, not the root user. So by default, the access is always going to be disabled for the root user. So that's how the NFS and Samba both are working. But again, while the transmission of the user credentials, they are doing in the plain text format. And so let me show you the vulnerabilities for the NFS. Yeah, so as you must be able to see from my screen, this is the denial of service. RPC is a remote procedure call in NFS utils. Allow attacker to cause a denial of service via the NFS mount of a directory from a client whose reverse DNS lookup name is different. See here, again the DNS comes into the picture. R quota D in NFS util. Quota is to take care about how many files a user or an application can create. Does not properly perform the integer conversion, which leads to a stack-based buffer overflow and allows the remote attackers to execute arbitrary code via the NFS. So these are the different kind of attacks you can see, and right now that is a major reason. On the cloud storage, if you go for, or onto the shared storage we go for, NFS is being okay, fine. Have you ever thought of that? Are you aware of how does the blockchain works? My dear students, are you aware of how
No,
exactly the
ma'am.
blockchain works? Yeah?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are you aware of how exactly the shared file system works? Are you aware of how exactly the shared file system works? Yes?
Not really, ma'am.
Okay. Shared file system means what? You are creating a shared device, you can say, which is getting access either through the NFS or through Samba. And if you do remember, I do not know whether you have noticed this thing or not, but while working with the SICSR, we were having the shared directory. Did you go through that or not? I'm not exactly aware of, but where every student is going to upload their projects, or lots of things were there. I do not know whether you are aware of this or not, but it was there. And the students were able to upload the projects, but they were not supposed to modify or the delete any other student's project. It was this is the way by which it was configured. So it was a shared device or the shared location which is getting accessed. Think about a scenario where the file is getting shared among the different kind of users. When the file is getting shared among the multiple different kind of users, so in that particular way, the file can be to maintain the consistency. The file can be shared by only one user at a time. or file can be opened in the read-write mode by only one user at a time, not by many users. So this was the concept what the blockchain has borrowed, and that's how the thing goes, that how exactly the multiple users can share and maintain the consistency among whatever the transactions which are taking place. We won't go into the detail of blockchain. The objective is to understand that when you say the shared file system, the NFS or the Samba, these are the APIs which are being developed to take care about the consistency, but they cannot, because this is a shared file system, but they cannot maintain the the security of the system. Fine. So I think we should stop here. I'm very tired while speaking for last 2 hours. Any question for me? Any question?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Fine. So we'll stop here now if there are no questions. I'm sorry, my voice is really doing bad.